Join me as we talk all things true crime.
Made contact and shattered.
Reference to a missing 4-year-old. The parents have called in and advised that the mother had went for a walk, came home, now they can't find her, they've been yelling for her.
Turn it over to another agency. Let's get some help.
Where are your kids? They've been missing for 4 months. You have nothing to say? You're over here in Hawaii? Dad, where are Lori's kids?
4 were stabbed multiple times and were likely asleep during the attack. Some had defensive wounds.
Most of them had just like one that was the lethal stab wound.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here for another ATS News live stream. We are talking about Idaho 4 today. It's been about a month. Our last stream on this was around the year anniversary. So we have a new update. And in 8 days, on December 28th, the house that the murders were set in is set to be demolished. Now, this has been a subject that has been talked about pretty much this whole year. And, he's almost been in custody for a full year as well, bryankohberger. So he is the defendant in this case, for those who don't know. And he is accused of murdering those 4 students in Idaho. Now, their names are Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan. And we're going to listen to some clips to kind of recap the case in general. It's only around 2 minutes. And then it will transition into some of the family's statements, specifically Gonsalves family's statements on this topic. So they have been front and center in a lot of media throughout this year, any chance they can, which, they are advocating for justice for their daughter. So it's understandable. Whereas other families in this 4 quadruple homicide case are in the background and showing support when they need to, but overall they're not in the mainstream like the Gonsalves family. So everyone's got their own way of dealing with this situation. It's very complex with the different families that are involved. There's 4 different victims, so you can just imagine where 4 different people are going to grieve in different ways. So hello everyone in chat. Hi Seth. Hi Chase. I saw Johnny's here. And Aries is here, Pointer Lover, Kay Braze. I saw my friend Florida Bass Fishing. He says, I think it's a big mistake demolishing the house before trial. Many times jurors want to walk through the crime scene. They're basically getting rid of potential evidence. And I feel the same way. Curious. Hi, Mac J. I'm curious how chat is feeling. Do you agree with Florida? Yes or no? And replay viewers, comment down below your thoughts. I know that there's a huge argument and stance in this whole situation of, well, they have the 3D scan, the 3D model, and that is the new way of showing the jury the crime scenes nowadays. And that, while technology does advance over time, I'm not convinced entirely that an in-person visit from the jury would do better. So it's a situation where are they going to get to the trial and they come up with the jurors come up with their stance. And one juror says, I might have felt differently if I had visited the crime scene. That could go either way. It could go, what if bryankohberger is innocent and he gets convicted because they didn't visit the crime scene, or he's guilty, but because they didn't visit the crime scene, 1 juror out of 12 is just unsure of things and, the timeline and all that. So it's a complex situation. And the last thing we want is for, appeals and stuff like that to take place in the future based off of this decision. So sometimes better safe than sorry is the best route to go, in my opinion. And yes, we're doing 2 live streams 2 nights in a row. Usually it's Tuesday and Friday nights, but I don't know. I might switch to Tuesday, Wednesdays. I don't know. I'm playing around with it because it's a holiday week. So I won't be here on Friday to go live. So Aries says they will regret it. They are making a mistake. it could lead to doubt. I agree. And it's just, it affected juries' opinions in the Murdoch trial. Yes. And we've talked about this topic throughout this whole year because it was, oh, we're going to demolish it. No, we're not going to demolish it. Now it's back on being demolished right before the end of the year. So some people are wondering, like, does this have anything to do with like tax purposes? From my understanding at this moment, the only people who can really petition to keep this house up would be the judge, the defense, the prosecution, and the owner of the house, who I believe he gave it over to the university. So there are petitions going on around social media. I've linked 2 separate ones in the description box, and I have them shared in my Facebook group. I don't know if a public petition would really make a difference. There's other talk. Hi, Roxanne. Thanks for coming. There's other talk that maybe they need legal help and that might cost money. So people are talking about setting up GoFundMes. I'm not opposed to that, if that's the route that needs to be taken. However, Ethan's mother doesn't she supports the university's decision to demolish it. So again, while one family might feel one way and we all feel a certain way, the people who are involved in this very closely don't agree with us. So it's just very complex, like I said, and interesting at the same time, because when have you ever seen a case where they're questioning to get rid of the crime scene like this? I turned off mute instead of my camera. I've just never seen a case where it's like, yes, let's get rid of this. They've done stuff where they've taken stuff down and put up memorials before, but this is talking about a memorial before a trial and justice. It doesn't look good as far as the university and even like the judge. I don't understand why even the defense or the prosecution is for this. Like, the defense might be on board with this more so because it usually would not look good for them to see how, like, it humanizes the victims more and makes their defendant look more like a monster. Like, these kids were sleeping in this house is this, it's just the perception of the jury could feel differently. And it might not work in favor of the defense if they kept it. And yet here we have the prosecution and the defense on the same page, and it's just puzzling. A lot of people don't understand like why they're in agreement over this, and I don't really either. As the University of Idaho prepares to knock down the rental home where 4 students were murdered last year, one of the victims' mothers is fighting to keep it standing until the suspect goes to trial. Experts told Fox Digital that the university's bid to demolish the building is a decision that prioritizes the school's aim to move on above the potential impact a firsthand look at the crime scene could have on jurors in the case against bryankohberger. Kara Northington, whose 20-year-old daughter, Xana Kernodle, was stabbed to death alongside 3 friends in the early morning hours of November 13, 2022, shared a change.org petition Sunday. Now, that petition is linked in my description box. Guys, feel free if you feel the need to sign it. My daughter was murdered in that house. There is no way they should be destroying any evidence, she wrote in the comments. The demolition is set to begin December 28th, less than a year after Kohberger's arrest. Tearing down the house before jurors have a chance to walk through it could potentially hidden a fair path to justice, according to the petition organizer. It's critical that all evidence remains intact until his trial concludes, he wrote. Police arrested Kohberger on December 30th, weeks after the murders, after he took a cross-country road trip with his dad to his family home in Pennsylvania. At the time of the slayings, he was studying for a PhD in criminology at Washington State University, about 10 miles from the King Road house. Kohberger allegedly entered the 3-story house around 4 a.m. On the upper level, he is accused of stabbing Kaylee, Maddie, and 2 of her best friends, who were both found in the other area of the house, along with a K-bar knife sheath the prosecutors allege had Kohberger's DNA on the snap. On the second level, he is accused of killing Kernodle and her boyfriend, Ethan Chapin. A surviving housemate overheard sounds of struggle from the second floor bedroom and told police she froze in shock as she saw a masked man with bushy eyebrows who left through the rear sliding door. Another survivor was on the building's lowest level. The landlord donated the property to the University of Idaho earlier this year, and the school announced plans to raise it and build a memorial garden, which, according to Chapin's family, is being designed by UI architecture students. I don't see why the house needs to be demolished before trial, a retired NYPD sergeant said. An adjunct professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, I understand the school wants to move on, but walking the jury through the crime scene when you have it is important to give them a perspective that photos just can't do. The FBI and defense investigators have returned to the house multiple times to take pictures and map the layout, but experts say pictures and videos may not be the same effect on jurors. Being able to visit the crime scene in certain cases is extremely important. And this is by another defense attorney, given their insight. Video and pictures can help, but may not accurately depict the scene, which way an in-person visit can do. The house should be preserved until the trial concludes. Kohberger's trial had initially set to begin in October, but he waived his right to a speedy proceedings and has focused on challenging the indictment and DNA evidence instead. Gonsalves' family, in a Facebook post, laminated the decision to tear down the house and said that December 28th would be a very sad day. So I feel like the majority of us feel like that should be handled with care, like evidence, and it just seems like they're ready to just move on. I don't understand how the community is going to move on before a trial. I feel like trial and justice for the victims is the best way for a community to move on, but I guess Ethan's family, they've always kind of stood by the state of Idaho, and his two siblings still go there. He was a triplet. They still are students there. I can understand why it's hard for them to maybe see the house being around. Now they boarded up the windows. It looks totally different than it did when the victims were living there. So I can understand why Chapin's family is kind of like, just get rid of it because it's a little too close. It might help them have better closure, the two siblings. So I can kind of understand that sense and that perspective. But it's very difficult when there's 4 families and they're not all on the same page. It's more than pictures. They did tons of 3D scans, which they can use to demonstrate the house spaciously. Telling that the interview room, he said his entire career, 30 years, he's never heard of a crime scene demolished to dust. Yeah. If Moscow is going for the most suspicious investigation ever, they are in the lead, in my opinion. Yeah. It's another weird aspect in this case. And some people believe these weird aspects equal shadiness. Some people just think like it's all about money. And I think that it could either be both, or maybe it is just one or the other. I think that it really comes down to money personally. That's my opinion for the university and for the image of the community. I think that they just are ready to move on, even if the courts aren't ready for trial, which, you can judge that how you want. For me, it's unfortunate. If I was on the jury, I would want to walk through the house. Yeah, and that's the thing too. And hello, Kay Danielle, it's good to see you. How many times have we kind of looked at these models of the house and videos of the house and diagrams and even realtor 3D tours that you could do through links of the house, and all of us have been very confused by the layout. This house was built one way, and then over time, the landlord added on different areas. So it was very much like a mix match house. It didn't flow. It didn't have like a homey vibe to it. It felt very much, and it looks very much just like, I don't know, like a party house. It really does. And that's what it was referred to by many students. It was known for being a party house. People would walk in it whenever they wanted. So again, I think we're kind of all thinking the same. And yeah, there's no way in hell DM didn't hear all of it. And it's interesting that you say that, Teresa, because in the clips that I'm going to play for you after the 2 minutes of just kind of recapping and refreshing of things, it's going to go into a former resident, and it's an older interview when this case first broke before Bryan was even arrested. I went back and I looked, and he talks about the noises of the house and, you know, the age of it, it's creaky, etc. And pretty much it makes me wonder if the prosecution, because they're probably going to use DM and BF as star witnesses, perhaps in protecting their witnesses and their story and narrative, they want the house taken down because it obviously doesn't look good for DM and BF. And if the house is seen by jurors as like, yeah, this is a really noisy house. Like, how did this witness DM testify that, you know, she just thought there was partying going on or whatever she ends up saying on the stand? You know what I mean? So it just makes me wonder if maybe that's why the prosecution is alongside of the university and the defense and saying like, yes, let's get rid of it, because they maybe think that it's a wild card for them to hold on to it with the witness that they kind of have. But I don't know. Now, let me just share my screen. So again, this is going to start off with some recap clips of the case. It's going to transition to a former resident of the building, and then it's going to transition to present time Steve Gonsalves interview. And it's all got different visuals. So it's not going to be the same Ashley Banfield and Steve interview. I still think the surviving roomies can add evidence. And I think that that's their hopes at trial, that something that they say will resonate with the jurors and the jurors will understand it. Now, what if those same jurors end up going to the crime scene and then they start questioning what DM said on the stand? Like, that's where my head's at. Like, maybe they just feel like, oh, I don't know. It's one thing for them to listen to DM on the stand with questions that they kind of put out there themselves. It's another thing for them to go and kind of stand near DM's room and all that. Like, is that not going to match up with what they're hoping for? So I don't know. I'm just theorizing. But as far as I know, the only ones that can stop this right now is the judge, the owner of the house, which is the university, the defense and prosecution. And it seems like this is happening. It's set in stone unless some miraculous event takes place and these GoFundMes or petitions actually make a difference. So we'll see.
She herself was a web sleuth. They have not confirmed that they have DNA from this person. They just said that they have a ton of evidence. It's all digital information.
She just made me proud.
She got to see what it was to have a boyfriend to live with and have a real life.
One call came in for an unresponsive female, an unresponsive person. And so when officers arrived, they addressed that issue, and then as well, 2 additional people were found.
We do not believe the following individuals were involved: the 2 surviving roommates, the male seen in a grub truck video circulating on the internet, a private party who drove Kaylee and Madison home, any of the individuals who spoke to the dispatcher on the 911 call.
I met him through some friends, and they told me that he was a little weird, and he was a little socially awkward, I guess you could say.
We're getting a new look at the so-called party house where the victims lived, and hearing from one student who once lived there.
No one that lives here is here right now. So where'd they go? They're just not here. I have no clue where they went. No clue.
Authorities seen responding to a noise complaint in September, greeted by people who didn't live at the house. Officers then speaking with Maddie Mogan, one of the victims, by phone, who along with the other residents was not there at the time.
What's your first name? Maddie?
Could be. Maybe.
And how do you spell that, Maddie?
My legal name is Madison. It's Madison.
The video showing how many outsiders were able to access the property. And as the mystery grows over how the killer was able to get away unnoticed, a former student who graduated in 2022 and lived at the same house during his junior year talks about his experience there.
It's definitely an old creaky house. You can't walk up any of the stairs or on any of the floors without everybody in the house knowing it. A lot of
So you can't walk up any of the stairs without the whole house knowing it. So again, back to what I'm stating, like, why is the prosecution so on board with this? Is it because it's not what, their narrative might be, like, as far as DM? I'm going to go through my DM theory and video after we go through some of this house stuff. And yeah, I just want to kind of play around with different theories tonight, and you guys share your theories too.
the students are very familiar with the inside of the home around the community. There have been thousands of people that have likely been through it throughout the years. Even when we had it, there were people that would come and knock on the door or walk in thinking that it was somebody else's house.
Cole Alternator says the building doesn't offer much privacy and was well known to students.
So that was the other thing. Of course, we kind of already know that just from us looking through footage of the house and images of the house. It didn't offer much privacy. So when Steve talks about wanting to know and wanting the jury to know what's being seen when you're even walking outside the perimeter of the house, what windows were open, what windows had blinds on them, you know, all that would be noteworthy for a juror. If I'm a juror, I'm looking and I'm thinking about all the times that they're going to lay out that Bryankohberger's phone pinged there. And I'm going to be wondering, okay, so he just came by and probably parked here and was looking in so-and-so's window. Like all that is going to matter to a juror, in my opinion.
I was surprised that we're at a moment in the case that we don't even have a trial date. You know, we've had a trial date for almost the vast majority once they had a suspect. So we don't have a trial date, but we have a date to have, you know, largely the biggest piece of evidence being destroyed, which just seems backwards, you know.
You didn't get much time, different than the time that we got in terms of this announcement.
No, and I kind of take this as from a perspective of that my opinion's not important as a parent. That's not it. What is important is the lead investigators at the county, state, and federal level. And it is to my knowledge that they are not in all agreement. And we tried to get them to all come in agreement and address, you know, come out with a formal statement.
So Steve is claiming that it's under his impression that even investigators, and hello, Tony and everyone else who joined, Georgia, Jody is cool. Thanks for being here, everybody. And if I missed you, don't take it personal. I'm just in train of thought. But he's claiming that investigators also can't agree on whether or not they should keep it or not keep it. And if they're not all on the same page, and that's an accurate statement made by Steve, then that's red flag, and that should put a halt on the whole thing. However, it just seems like since the owner of the house, as of right now, is a university, that their needs and wants are going to go above justice for these victims. And that's how I see it. It sounds brash and harsh against this university. It's just my opinion, but it does seem like they're putting their own personal values and gains above the courts and above these victims receiving the justice that they deserve. That's wrong, in my opinion. And I don't think that that will look good because, you know, these schools are obviously a business too. Would you want your child going to school if these were the morals that it seems like they have? Also, they might already be taking a financial hit or maybe decline ever since these murders took place. And I'm wondering if that has anything to do with it, and I'm also wondering, like, what exactly are the numbers in that situation? How many less people are applying to their school because of these murders? Again, it's like, I don't think that that would really hinder somebody's want to go to a university. But if I heard bad press about a university and it was shined in the limelight like this story is, that to me would rub me the wrong way more so than some unfortunate event that took place and these kids, the victims, went to that university. So I don't know. It just hello, good to see you, Roz Illusion. The house should stand until trial is over, period. Get on with the trial already, and there wouldn't be a problem. I agree. And I know the chat is going crazy over DM. It's always a topic in this case that people are just, we don't understand it. So, how did she not freak and run for her life? I see anyone in my house murdered and it registered the horror. I would be terrified for my life. I don't think anybody understands it. And I've seen other people, including Florida, 8 hours is just too long. I know Steve looks, that's the thing, is I had to put different visuals with his audio, Jody, because it pains me to see the sadness in his eyes. And like, I'm very much like hyper focused on like people's wrinkles and age process. And he just has like those 11s right between his eyebrows that he didn't have in pictures of him before Kaylee passed. So it's just, you know what it's like to strain your face that way. And when you're in agony, it literally is like freezing him in that with those wrinkles. And he's just aged so much. And he pretty much describes in this interview that he's not going to fight like tooth and nail for this situation, but he said he wouldn't be able to pretty much sleep well at night. Of course, you'll hear his exact quote, but he wouldn't be able to sleep well at night if he didn't at least try to keep this house up. So he's trying his best, but it seems like he's already almost in the acceptance mode of like, I guess like we just don't have a fight in this. Now that's where people are saying, oh, let's do a GoFundMe. I seen it was on Twitter and YouTube. It's all over the place. What I don't know, what legal help could they get when they're not the owners? That's the thing that I'm like, how could this like proceed legally? And you guys let me know. You guys know more in a lot of cases than I do. So if they did get a lawyer and they tried to fight to keep this house up, like what would be their leg to stand on? They don't own the property. So I'm just curious what you guys think there. The only thing that I was thinking that what if the trial didn't go the way that the victims' families wanted it to go, then I could see them kind of like suing whoever and saying like, this is the reason why our daughter didn't, or our son or daughter didn't get justice because you tore this house down. Like in case like a juror came out and said like, well, we wish we could have seen it, or it might've been different if I seen it in person. Who knows? Like any of these situations could take place. And that's why it's always like, everyone's like, well, better safe than sorry, just keep it. Or other people have said things like, somebody could change their mind totally as a juror. Like you might feel a certain way the whole trial. And then just like in the Alex Murdaugh one, people said, well, once I was there in the feed room and I seen it, that's when I knew. And it's like, it's crazy for them to take the risk. The prosecution, Steve also talks about in this with Ashley Banfield, that he's been told that, well, don't worry, our case is so strong that we don't need to keep this house. Just trust us. And it reminds me of, and I know people hate this comparison, the OJ trial when the prosecution was cocky and they thought that they had everything in the bag, and she asks him to try on the glove or like gets them in the position for him to try on the glove, and it was the prosecution's fault. It was their mistake. And because he did what he did, and I believe that OJ is guilty, he ends up being acquitted because it didn't fit. And it's been seen by the jury. And that made them, some of them change their mind. Hi, Derek. Good to see you. I can't believe they will take it down before trial. Yeah, it makes no sense. Oh my gosh, I love your picture with the doggies. So cute. I feel the house should stay up even after trial. I don't think it's stopping anyone from going to the university, in my opinion. Right. It's like if you want to go to a university or there's something you need to study and that's the place to go, you're going to go. So yeah, the speed for them to, that's where I'm wondering, like, are they having a decline in admissions and they're blaming it on the house? You know what I mean? Like they're thinking like, well, the optics look bad and we should get rid of it. I don't know if that's the case. I'm just wondering, like, are they just trying to blame it on that? So they think they're going to fix it by changing that? I would want to see the house as a juror. And then also in this interview, he talks about how I was told the ideal juror will be somebody who's like a farmer, etc., blah, blah, blah. And I can see the angle of why that they're picking that. But I can also think like if that's the perfect juror for the prosecution, then, when you're describing these like housing situations and limits in the corner block and the apartment complex next to it and the parking lot behind it, if you're just used to a country setting, I don't think until you're like the person recording in your car, like people went there and vlogged in their car and drove around. People went there and just walked around, but like showed you like the streets and all that. You don't realize how close these houses are until you're seeing it on the ground. So when people were videotaping that way, but is that going to be enough for 12 jurors? And the way that the sounds echo and all that acoustics are going to change once that house is taken down. It's just getting rid of the house won't change what happened. The memories will always be there. And I'm just wondering also, like, so do they just not want like outsiders come in there to like film and, put memorial stuff there? Because they had like a huge problem with that. Remember in the Watts case, the neighborhood was like, okay, like they allowed it for a while. I want to say they allowed it for like, I don't know, over a year or so. And then all of a sudden it was like, no, don't leave teddy bears, don't leave flowers. We don't want candles. And this is a HOA neighborhood. Obviously, Idaho isn't the same as Watts neighborhood, but I'm just wondering, like, do they just not want it to become like this memorial in that way? Like, do they not want people to go there and do seances and ghost hunting and stuff like that? You know what I mean? Like, is it just like, we want to keep the riffraff out? We want locals around here. We want our businesses to, be like a community and not have outsiders. And if you are an outsider, I would love for you to just go to our university. Like, I'm just wondering if they're trying to kind of control the traffic through there and what ends up taking place in their community, because that they will, that house, if it stayed, people would be visiting it like daily. I really think so.
So if they can't all agree, I find it very hard for the parents to all agree. We're all trying to get through this the best way we can. I want to be absolutely respectful to every single one of the parents. I understand that this has to go down, and I'm not going to fight it forever. And I want to be careful what I fight, because this is a losing battle.
Ethan Chapin's mom, Stacy, has given that statement to me, saying that, we're okay with this at this point. We agree with the university. We think it's in the best interest of the kids who are there, including her 2 kids, and the community as a whole. What are your thoughts about that?
I totally respect it. I get it. I have leaked footage. I've seen things that they may have not seen. I know for a fact the path that this car took. And people are going to wonder what he was doing when he parks in certain locations for extended amount of time. What was he looking at? I want to know what he was looking at. And I don't know how you can see what this man was looking at without the house being there. What windows was he peering into? Why did he pick that location to stop at? Why did he keep going back to these certain locations? And I don't know about the other 12 or 13 times that he was there. I just know of the day that this happened and the footage that was given to me. So I'm going to do what's best for my girl. I'm going to protect her. I'm going to weigh on the side of what's best for her and making sure that I'm not going to let something slip through our hands that I could have said something. But I do understand it.
Do you think it's at all possible that the prosecution is so confident about their case, they're not worried at all about the house standing?
I've been told that exact thing. I've been told 100%. The amount of stuff we have, Steve, relax. You know, you're a very aggressive a father. Relax. But it's not in my character to just sit back and just know that an opportunity isn't being seized upon. And I couldn't live with myself. I couldn't live with myself if later on, you know, something happened and a jury member said, you know what, it really came down to the fact that I couldn't see firsthand. They told us the ideal jury member was someone who had thousands of acres and had no time to watch TV. He was out on the farm. Well, I don't feel like that kind of guy is going to see the footage that I seen and not want to understand what was going on in the house. And a computer program is going to mean nothing to that farmer. Almost zero value in a computer model to a farmer like that.
They've told you that, Steve, the amount of stuff we have, relax. Are you referring to like victims advocates or people actually in the know of the case, that they have such a solid case that you should rest easy?
Because I've made myself vocal, people have reached out to me, and some of those people have just said that if what I know is accurate, Steve, there's a massive amount of information. This case will open up other investigators to know that there's a whole nother level of data being collected on people, and some of that will come out in this case.
All right, give me a like if you liked the little remix clips that I put together there. I did that in the midst of bath time tonight, wrapping presents, dinner, all that. So that edit job, please give it a like. Anyways, guys, so just some things that I took away from that too, listening to it again, is it, like I was saying earlier, it's a huge risk, I think, for the prosecution. If, you know, Kohberger is 100% guilty, it's a huge risk for them to get rid of the house, in my opinion. I know that they're saying to Steve, don't worry about it. But it's still, to me, it's like you should tread on the side of caution, in my opinion, you know? And the other thing that I wrote as a little side note is when he's talking about the jurors that they're describing would be their ideal juror, and they want somebody who's been, you know, farming all day, no time for the TV, just obviously oblivious to this case. What, and he's saying that they won't, the 3D imagery and the computer aspect of this crime scene is not going to resonate with that juror. And I totally agree, because even computer savvy people get bored with a presentation. You know what I mean? And who knows when they're going to present that at the trial. Is it going to be they're going to bring out this 3D crime scene, you know, halfway through the day where people are already kind of lagging? Are they going to bring it out first thing in the morning where people just aren't really like awake and paying attention? Like, I'm just curious the tactic and the plan that the prosecution has in presenting this to the jury, because if you're even if you're my age, if you're older than me, I just don't really think that a computer presentation, I don't know what this is going to look like, but it really might not resonate with the audience. and the jurors, basically. And I'm just wondering, will they be zoning out? It's just a lot. So I just have concerns. I think like everybody does. Now, I haven't watched these. I want to watch them with you guys and just kind of listen and react. So again, thank you all for being here. I appreciate it.
But first, I want to go to NewsStation senior national correspondent Brian Enton for an update on where we are with the demolition plans. So, understandably, Brian, I don't think it's a secret that the people at the university they're so exhausted by the scar of that house on campus. And it's just off campus, but it's visible on campus. But the community online is a different animal. What's happening?
And also, my concern with is, obviously I want justice for the victims and I believe that they have the right guy, but I can't be 100%. So my concern also is I want the defendant to get a fair trial as well and make sure that there's no appeals that this person tries to lay out in the future. Say he is guilty and he gets some appeal and he gets out. You know what I mean? That would not be justice either. So I have concerns also with, the whole aspect of, like you said here, Georgia, like you could see it on a computer screen and they can show you this really realistic model, but you're not going to be able to hear the sounds and smell the smells and get that feel of the whole place, like how the crime took place. This is where he came in. This is his path. This is where he exited. All that, is going to matter to a juror. And like I said, if Brian Kohberger is going to be given a fair trial, shouldn't every cent that you have, even your 6 cents, even your gut as a juror, shouldn't that be coming into play, knowing that he's facing like the firing squad potentially? He's up on facing death for this. And shouldn't, if he's innocent, shouldn't he be given the chance for the jurors to have all their senses affected by the crime scene to make their decision? For something like someone's going away for this type of crime, I feel like that should be fair. But in the argument, his defense team is saying we're fine with it. But I'm really curious if it was something that, like, what if the defendant himself was unsure, but the lawyer persuaded him? We just don't know all these things, and they're important.
There.
Yeah, it's interesting, actually. I don't think I've heard one expert who you have interviewed or one expert who I have interviewed who has said that they believe the house should be torn down. Everyone that we're talking to is saying the opposite. And that seems to be the consensus online, too. I mean, there's now the petition that's been started. People are really, really upset about this, and they don't understand it. They don't understand why you would tear the house down before trial. But it's interesting when you're on the ground in Moscow, and I was there last month, and this has been an ongoing issue. So I was asking students about it on campus. There is this sense in the small college town that they want the house gone. It's a painful reminder of what happened. Also, remember, Ashley, I mean, these are college kids. I mean, they want to move on with their college career. Yes, they respect the victims, and the candlelight vigil on the 1-year anniversary was packed with thousands of these kids. So they respect the victims, but in many ways they want to move on, and there's this sense that the town wants to move on.
I'd be so curious about the students at the University of Idaho in the criminal justice program who may look at things a little differently than, say, somebody who's in law or in politics or commerce or something like that. So let's talk about the date. December 28th. I don't see any changes. I don't see anything from the university side of things where they're wavering like they have a couple.
And I'm curious what you guys think. Do you guys think that the students going, because I rarely even think about what it would be like to be another college person going there, except for when I'm thinking about like Ethan's siblings. But like I stated earlier in chat, stated earlier while we were talking, I understand why Ethan's family is like okay with it, specifically because the siblings are going there and there's students there, and it is a way for them to maybe move on and heal. But so would justice for their brother. But like I said too, there's 4 different families, 4 different ways to grieve. So I can be empathetic and see their step in their shoes and understand why Ethan's family wants it down because of the students, the siblings. Do you guys think that the rest of the students have a dog in this fight? Like, should we consider their feelings about, like they said, this is just a stain on the community. It's a constant reminder. They just want to have fun and go to school. And it would help them heal if it was gone. Like, I'm curious, like, this other students even have like a say in any of this? Yeah, knocking down the house won't cancel out what happened. And people are always going to go there to kind of study this case. Like, I think that it's taken a grasp on people like other big cases have, where even after it's said and done and there's a conviction, then it's always going to pull interest. But yeah, do they care? Do the students even care? Like, I feel like, again, I don't know like what other kids are like, but when I was that age, like, it's all about me, the selfishness and doing what I want. And I just don't think that they even like, it doesn't bother them probably that house is in the neighborhood as long as they can party. You know what I mean? They're terrified because they see criminals everywhere around this drugs. There didn't have to be screaming to be other noises that would have or should have caused concern. Yeah. If I was a student, I just want justice for them first. I think some say, but not all, the family members that have lost should have say, right? And that's where I think it's coming into play of like, do they have like grounds to sue or like to do anything legally to keep this? Like, that's where I'm like, how would that take place? I think they are going to do everything they usually would do, in my opinion. Right. I just think life goes on for the students, like, and when they're talking about like, well, the community wants to move on, I just feel like there is probably a bunch that do, but it, to me, is probably the people who are like, who make money from the university, like not so much the students. It just comes down to money, I think.
Couple times in the past. So what the choice of that date is actually pretty clever, isn't it?
It is, and the plan does seem set in stone in this time. I mean, you and I have talked about it. They've got the contractor lined up. They've got the media staging area. And the date, I mean, it sort of makes sense from their perspective. It's after Christmas. It's before New Year's. There's not a lot of people on campus during that time. I've been there around that time. And in the summer when the students are gone, I mean, it's almost like a ghost town. So it makes sense that they would want to do it then. They said it's going to take a couple of days. But in terms of timing, I went back looking through all the statements that we've gotten. And I went back to March 22nd, so 9 months ago. That was the first time I saw that we had an email that was sent to the victims' families. And I want to read you part, Ashley. It was from a lawyer at the University of Idaho who emailed the families and said, the homeowner gifted the house to the University of Idaho with the intent by both parties that it be demolished. So that was 3 months after Bryankohberger's arrest. And they already intended to tear that house down and said that it was the opinion of the homeowner and the university who had been gifted the house. So they've wanted this house down basically since the beginning, Ashley.
I just keep going back to the, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas school, where, horrendous school shooting happened in 2018. And it was 4.5 years before the, I call it the sort of the murder or the death penalty phase in the case was played out, because the defendant pleaded guilty, so it just had to be a death penalty phase that needed a jury, which was a couple months long. But they kept that school intact. Just imagine those hallways with book bags scattered, bloodstains scattered. They did not clean up that scene. They preserved the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas school scene for 4.5 years. Brian, I just found out tonight, it's still not even demolished. The demo on that school isn't scheduled until summer of 2024. Another 6 months. So you think about that case, and he pleaded. It was just a death penalty phase they needed to deal with there.
That school, Ashley, by the way, that building is in the middle of the school campus there in Parkland, Florida. So there are kids that had to walk around that building every single day. Remember, this house is to the side of the campus. It's not right in the middle of the campus. And in Parkland, they put these beautiful banners of the victims up, a big fence and beautiful banners of the victims. So when the kids walked around, they saw their beautiful faces. I don't understand why that hasn't been brought up in Idaho. I mean, they haven't put a big fence around the house or tried to block off view.
Honestly, maybe the looky-loo part of it, where they have crime tourists, which maybe at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, because it was a school shooting, maybe there wouldn't have been as many. I'm not sure. But one really quick question, and I'll have to wrap it, and that is there anything left? Any Hail Mary pass that anybody can present to put this demolition off?
Well, I've been talking to sources about that question, and there's one thing that I've come up with. It's called a civil action. It's possible that someone, perhaps the victim's family member, could file a civil lawsuit against the University of Idaho, and then as part of that lawsuit, ask for an injunction claiming that the house is potentially evidence. And if they do that, it is possible that they could keep the house standing. It's a big if. Also, it would be very expensive. I mean, I'm talking $100,000, maybe more, for a massive lawsuit. And remember, you're up against the University of Idaho.
Okay, so I'm glad I'm listening and reacting with you guys live with this. I didn't watch this. Miss Aries says, good point. I didn't even think about this angle. So my thing is, I think that depending on how much it costs, like, I think that the community would definitely help out in doing this. Like, the fundraiser, whatever, could be definitely something that could easily be done. However, I'm just wondering, like, but what about the families who want it taken down? Now, is it the Chapins want it taken down, or is it they're okay with the university's decision? Whereas, like, maybe they would be okay with keeping it if the rest of the families wanted to keep it. You know, it's just it's very complex. Again, it's the word for this case. And I also, you guys hate this, that when comparing it to other cases we've studied, specifically the Watts case, you know, there was and is a lot of, like, conspiracies and theories about the Watts case and there being others' involvement. And they tore down that crime scene. And people were out there visiting it even after it was taken down. But it just makes me wonder, you know, with things being so red flag in that case, for those who have studied it, understand. It worries me that the same thing is kind of happening here, where, like, an entity with money and power is like, get rid of it. And the prosecution is okay with that. And so is the defense. It's just kind of all very, it leaves room for people to kind of theorize that something's up, or they're hiding something. You know what I mean? And they've already talked about, oh, we don't want conspiracies and all that. It's like, but now the conspiracies, I think, and the idea that there's something shady going on, and, you know, poor police work or bad mistakes and decisions made, like, why are we going to demolish this before the trial and then just leave that door open for that to kind of be more fuel to that fire, you know?
Ton of connections in that town, political connections. So it's a big if, but that is one possibility.
That's a good point, Brian Enton. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. We'll continue to watch. As we said, the countdown is on right days. Thank you for watching. Go to News.
Okay, let me switch up my screen. I want to play another one that came out that I haven't watched. So
I'm joined now by Alan Bloom. He was Cynthia Summers' second attorney the one who got her released, not the ineffective one. Alan, I'm so glad that you're here tonight, because when Cheney Mason brought up the possibility of ineffective assistance of counsel if Kohberger is convicted in the Idaho case, I immediately thought about you, and I wanted to get your thoughts. What do you think about that?
Did you say that the defense attorney in this case actually conceded the fact that they could destroy this crime scene?
Yes.
Okay, so now you're dealing on very iffy grounds. Now you have a situation where counsel is not attempting to preserve it. There is no question in the world that what should be done in this circumstance is that counsel should request that the court preserve the crime scene. If the prosecution is going to push for its destruction or going to allow it, or if the court overrules that request and allows for the destruction of the crime scene. At that point, you can at least say that the defense has been denied one of its rights, its critical right to properly prepare for the case if, and this is a key thing, if some piece of evidence is found down the line that would have made a difference in the case. You mentioned Cynthia's case. In Cynthia's case, what we found was that the prosecution had not properly handled the lab work that was done, and they had tainted it. And yet we found a third batch of samples that had not been touched and were pristine. We were able to compare that to what the tainted evidence was that was presented in court. And we showed then that the evidence that was preserved showed that there was, as you said, no arsenic at all in his system. They would have to find that type of incredibly powerful evidence at the crime scene that wasn't available to the defense because it was torn down.
You know how this works. I mean, you're a master of the courtroom. You never know what's going to happen in a murder trial. Most defense attorneys I've spoken with, and prosecutors too, say there's always something that throws them for a loop when they actually get to the litigation phase. So I guess the point is, why would you agree to this? Why would you, as a defense attorney, agree to tear down that house, knowing something could happen during trial and you can't remedy it with the house still standing? And your job could be on the line, because if he decides to throw ineffective assistance of counsel out there, that's on your head.
Well, I'm not so much worried about the lawyer. If you want to know, I'm worried about the accused, the person who's charged with this crime, who didn't get a chance to present the evidence that should have been presented. Now, I'm not saying, well, I said that actually a little bit wrong. I said didn't get the chance. We don't know if there's something key inside that house or not. But you're absolutely right. Once they demolish the house, the crime scene is gone. There is no opportunity at that point to present something that might come up. And you're also right about something else. A murder trial evolves. It starts in one spot, and every case that I've done, and I've done hundreds of them, every case that I've done ends in a different spot. You can't predict exactly what's going to happen. And there is no way that this house shouldn't be attempted to be preserved so that it can be reviewed at some later point when that issue finally comes up. We don't know all the issues that will be presented at trial. The defendant doesn't know what's going to be important. We get it. We have a strong idea, but we don't know for sure. And you're not going to know, and you're never going to have a chance to check it out if this crime scene isn't preserved.
Alan, do you think it's possible, because there's a gag order in this case, so we really don't know a lot. We certainly don't know what the state has on Bryan Kohberger. We think it's a lot. What we do know.
My concern also, the fact that they wanted to tear this down, like they've been talking about this all year. And yeah, Tony made a good point when she said that Ethan didn't live there at the house, so his family feels differently than others. And I definitely agree there. Marshall Dove, what did you mean by they're all going to sue? And I'm wondering that too. She said admission has to have plummeted since they are scrambling. And like this guy says, like, what happens if something comes up during trial? Now you don't have that piece of evidence for both sides, pretty much.
Is a lot. But is it possible at this point that the state has true discovery, shared with the defense attorney enough for them both to know we've got him dead to rights. This eventually is going to end up in a plea deal. Let the house come down. Let the community heal.
You
Is
mean
it
dead to
possible
rights
there's
to the
any
sense?
kind of discussion like that? Go ahead. Are you still there? Can you hear me?
You mean dead to rights to the sense that you know that okay. You mean dead to rights to the sense that you're sure that somebody died from arsenic, and then you find out that he didn't die from arsenic and all. There is no
That's a good point.
such thing as dead to rights. There is no such thing as being certain in a case. It's entirely possible that there is an enormous amount of evidence in this case. I don't know one way or the other. I do know, though, that no case ends up where it began. There's always variations high and low with it. I do also know that preserving the third-party crime scene in this case is an essential thing that should and must be done. Whether the court's going to do it or not, then it's on the court. If you go to the court and you say, no, this evidence should be preserved, this should be preserved, because we don't know everything right now. I can send my investigator, my experts in there for a day or 24 hours now, but here we are in December. This trial is going to be a next number of months from now. We don't know what the issues are going to be presented. We don't know every one of those issues.
And pretty much, speaking of not knowing all the issues, they had been talking about demolishing this for quite some time, this entire year. And all of a sudden they were in the house about a month ago, FBI, and they're going back through and they're processing things, or they're looking for things, or they were doing something in the house with the 3D scanner. So if the house had been demolished already, that walkthrough or whatever they did there wouldn't have happened. So obviously they needed more, or they were too confident in saying, yes, demolish it, because they've been talking about it even before that. And all of a sudden they're back at the house. So it like he's saying, like, you just never know what's going to come up. So they acted like, no, get rid of it for this entire year. And then all of a sudden they're back in the house about a month ago.
We should not remove the opportunity for my client to have a fair trial.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find.
So I think, we're all feeling the same way. There's no logical reason for them to demolish the house before trial. The only reason to do that would be for the university and I guess even businesses around there and like the community to maybe their sales aren't as good or something. I don't know. I'm just feeling like it's usually always a money aspect of things like this. Early on, I believe there was a filed document that gave notice that there would be a possibility of legal action against Moscow. I will look when I can. It's common when law enforcement makes mistakes. Yes, I know what you're talking about. They reserve the right to sue the city or something along the lines of that. But 2023 undergrad enrollment up 3.5% from 2022 stats. Wow. Thanks for checking that out. Okay, so this is just a theory. This isn't my thoughts currently. This isn't like my direction that I'm in this case. I believe that it's just possible. And I made this video months ago. I just want to share it again because we were talking about the roommates, the surviving roommates, and it's just a theory. So don't come at me and throw hate in the comments. I think that it's just something that's possible, and maybe it explains a lot, but again, this isn't necessarily what I think in the case. Johnny says, I agree, Mrs. ATS News. Block it up so no one has to see it. And once the case is over and not need it anymore, demo it. Right. If they tear down the house, wouldn't that give Brian an automatic appeal? And it seemed like, and hello, Allison, it's good to see you. And I saw Delana come in too, and hi, ladies. I think that that's what that lawyer that was just speaking with Ashley Banfield was kind of saying, that like something could come up and it's not there. So now all of a sudden the defendant lost his right to a fair trial, or, there could be some loophole. And that's why another expert was pretty much saying like there would be no benefit to the defense to like keep it. So of course they're on board with getting rid of it. The question that I have and a lot of people have is like, why does the prosecution feel like they're so confident that they don't need it? And that worries me, because there's other cases where people were confident and the defendant was acquitted, and it seemed like the defendant shouldn't have been acquitted. If you could just put me aside, your pocket of your ripped jeans just get sung out of my head. Oh, I don't know that song. Who sings that one? Okay, so let me play my DM theory. Again, just a theory.
I just want to reiterate that this is simply speculation. Since I had taken a break from the case and covered other cases and then went back and edited my documentary, I hope to gain new insight and look at the case from different angles. And in doing so, some things stuck out to me. I've decided to take a different look at the statements and the actions of the surviving roommate, DM. I think it's important to acknowledge that I'm fully aware of what frozen shock phase looks like and how it really does happen in certain situations. And since I have the acknowledgement of that, I think it's fair to accept that that could be what happened here. However, I think it's also fair to kind of look at the case in a different angle, and perhaps there's more to what DM saw and heard that night. Remember, the camera at the neighbor's house picked up noises, and obviously DM would have had to have heard those noises. And some of those include a thud, crying, a male's voice saying, "It's okay, I'm here to help." This is speculation, but isn't it possible that DM wasn't as close to the victims as we have been told?
Ethan was stayed the night at his girlfriend's house, who was one of 5 girls who lived in the home.
After the PCA came out and we found out everything that DM had heard and saw, the delay in calling 911 was blowing our minds. Not only did she wait so long to get help from 911, but she summoned friends over first. All her actions just did not make sense to us. Could it be she really was frozen in fear, and that explains the hesitation? Absolutely. Could it also be something more, perhaps?
I spoke with County Prosecutor Bill Thompson. It's an essential part of the case. Whoever discovered the scene first, whoever initiated the contact with law enforcement is all part of understanding what occurred and the timeline of what occurred.
Bill Thompson here says the 911 call is an essential part of the case. He says whoever discovered the scene first and whoever initiated contact with law enforcement first helps us understand what happened. I'm not saying that DM participated in the crime itself, but since he says that whoever initiated contact with law enforcement is a part of understanding what occurred, is it possible that DM had more knowledge of what was going on, but maybe was in sort of a denial phase or just scared that it was actually happening? Did she say something to Brian that he took it as she wanted him to do this for her? I know that sounds crazy, but let me explain. Is it possible when they tell us that the 911 call came in from a surviving roommate's phone and numerous people were on that call, is it possible that Dylan used her phone, but she didn't want to be recorded on the 911 side because she had more knowledge or about what was taking place? She has more information. She knew maybe why this happened.
He told me the 2 roommates may have critical information.
The investigators are already talking to him and trying to get from them everything they can possibly remember about what they may have seen, what they may have heard, what their activities were, what they know about the activities of their housemates.
Remember, in some of the latest defense motions, it states that Bryankohberger has no connection to any of the victims. Does that mean that his connection to the house was actually DM? Is it Crazy to think that maybe DM led Brian on in some sort of way. Did one of the victims tell DM something that Brian didn't want her to know, so he was taking his revenge out? Were one of them mean to DM and Brian thought that he was helping DM by removing the issue and the rest of them were just collateral? Remember, something they kept telling everybody, including the community, is it was a targeted attack. Pretty much told the public not to worry because it was targeted. And since we know that DM spoke with law enforcement immediately, is it possible that that's the information they gathered from her to know that it was targeted and that it wasn't going to happen anywhere else? Because of the inside information that DM had on what took place. Bill Thompson says that the roommate's information is crucial to the case. Did DM strike some sort of deal where she's safe from whatever involvement she had in the case because she's going to work as a witness for the prosecution?
You've said that this was a targeted attack. Why not tell the public who was targeted? If it was multiple people, it would go a long ways to telling the public what you're looking for and who you're looking for, the type of person you're looking for. Why not do that to alleviate some of the fears out there in the community?
We don't want to put our investigation in jeopardy by releasing what we have. We told the public very clearly from the beginning that we believe it was a targeted attack. I mean, to be honest, you're going to have to trust us on that at this point because we're not going to release why we think that.
Some of the first statements made by the mayor in the coroner have always stuck with me. We heard the mayor come out saying that it was a crime of passion, and then he tried to walk that statement back.
Now, this quote that's going around, a crime of passion that has been seen in several media outlets published, he clarified that to us. The mayor is not saying it is a crime of passion. He says it could be a crime of passion.
But isn't it possible that that statement was actually true? And couldn't it still be a crime of passion if it was a crime committed by Brian for DM? For whatever reason, couldn't that still be considered a crime of passion? We also heard the coroner state that it was personal and that he must have been pretty angry.
The coroner called the attack personal.
Couldn't that still be true if his connection to the house was DM and he had some sort of issue with one of the victims? And again, that would make the other victims possibly collateral damage. If this was all true, and again, I'm not stating this as fact, it would mean that they knew Brian was their suspect very early on, from the day that DM handed over everything that she knew about everything. People have speculated that they did know about Brian very early on and have tried to pinpoint the time that they started narrowing in on Brian. Some of these first statements by Kaylee's family stand out to me because on the 20th of November, it sounds like they knew it was a male, even though Steve tries to say he's just guessing at that fact. And it does sound like they already were in the process of getting the DNA tested through 23andMe or something similar to that, which obviously would mean that they were surveying Brian for a lot longer than we had thought. Could they have been surveying Kohberger while they waited for the DNA stuff to come back so that they had something more solid? I think that is possible.
They have not confirmed that they have DNA from this person. They just said that they have a ton of evidence. It's all digital information.
When they say digital information, could it mean that they were looking through DM's phone with her communications with Brian, in addition to everything else that they've been looking at?
They're telling us that there's so much evidence that it's going to take a lot of time to process it all. This wasn't like a pinpoint crime. This person was sloppy. He did whatever. When I say he, obviously you can't say that. That's just me. But he made a mess, and there's a mess there, and they're going to have to go through that point by point, and that's going to take a lot of time. That's why they reached out to other facilities to help them with that lab work.
Hopefully they're reaching out to other DNA processing type companies such as like 23andMe.
I also think it's possible that he returned the next morning because he felt safe knowing that DM wasn't going to call the cops yet. Knowing his conversations with DM, he felt safe returning in the morning and safe not shutting his phone off again. I really appreciate you guys being here today and listening to my theory. Again, it's just a theory. It's just speculation. And until we get to the trial and find out the truth, that's really all we have to go off of. So comment down below and let me know your thoughts on the new theory.
Take a drive.
Okay, I have not watched that since I edited that. And let me see how old that video was. But I forgot that I even put it together like the way that it is. So again, that's not my working theory. It was just me trying to look at the case from a different angle than I was. And I think that it's sort of the way that I can kind of go through a case is to kind of run it one way in my head and then think of everybody who thinks opposite of me and run it backwards through my head and try to see it from their angle. So yeah, that video is 5 months old, or made 5 months ago, sorry. And yeah, just we will know, yeah, will it play out at trial, and will it stick with 12 jurors in a way that is in favor for the victims, you know, because we don't want any hiccups in this. We don't want a hung jury, you know, all that. It should be solid in the prosecution. It's up to them to lay it out for the jury and to pretty much prove it. So they have the burden of proof. And I wanted to say thank you to all my moderators and everybody who joined tonight. Hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't. And Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everybody. We won't be live like we usually are on Friday. That's why we're live tonight. And yeah, I will speak with you guys after the holiday and we'll talk very soon. But thank you all for being here, and